This is the 21.5 Show.
You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Whether you're a professional pilot or want to be one, you're in the right place.
Let's get started.
Join professional aviators Dylan and Max as they talk their experience in the airlines, business aviation, and more.
Life is good.
Industry experts, unique stories, and plenty of fun. This is the 21.5 Show.
Here we go.
You have done it. You've tuned into another episode of the 21.5 Show. It's a show by professional pilots for professional pilots, guided by your hosts, Dylan and Max. Hello, my name is Dylan.
Hello.
Hello, Max. Max, I've been waiting to record this show. I think we both have because we've got so much to talk about. And how many phone calls have we had in the last 2 weeks? We're like, stop! Don't say anything.
It's kind of annoying, honestly.
It's getting annoying.
Yeah, we used to just be friends.
I know.
It was easier then.
We're like, oh, stop, save it. So lots to get into. Hello, welcome. If you're new to the program, my name is Dylan, pilot in business aviation, joined by my co-host, airline pilot extraordinaire, Maxwell.
Hi, Max. I'm an airline pilot. I'm a corporate pilot, also a general aviation pilot, occasionally a radio-controlled pilot.
I'll be doing some radio-controlled activity here as soon as we hang up.
Yeah, I went on a nice flight this morning with my dad and I.
Yeah?
Early morning, Sunday. It's great. It's like nobody, I couldn't believe it. There's nobody flying. It was like 65 degrees, perfect day, calm winds, not a cloud in the sky. Nobody around.
There was something in the sky.
Except for, there's hot air balloons all over the place. I was like, hey, watch this. And there's like a whole bunch of them. And we flew like right between two of them. Like they were pretty close. It was cool. You could see the people waving. Like we were pretty close. It was cool.
That's awesome. You've been in a hot air balloon, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's scary. You have no control.
It's bizarre. I can't remember if we've talked about this on the show or not, but I did it in Albuquerque. Oh, this is great. So you know how we have different segments on the show? We do flight advice and mailbag and, all these different TED and all these. I think this new segment is just like, is it notes with Max? I can't decide.
I don't really like it when it's just notes because it's just things I always like forget about. Max
has this, as we've talked about before, this shared note that we have where he adds all these things he wants to talk about in the show, and I've just started adding it to the agenda, and I'm looking at it, and they're stacking up. There's a lot on there, so we've just got to jump right into it if we want to get this show.
Well, it's funny.
rolling.
What I was talking about, it just reminded me of another thing that I'd forgotten, and I told Christian while we were flying, I'm like, dude, don't let me forget. I got to put this in the notes for the show, and then I didn't remember to after we landed. I called him later afternoon. I'm like, hey, what was that thing that I told you I had to remember? And he couldn't remember it either. And I just remembered it. So
good.
I was saying how the hot air balloon's kind of scary, right? Like,
yeah.
Because you can only, it's like having an airplane with only an elevator. You can only go up and down. Like there's no other,
right.
And then the rest of it, you're just at the whim of winds, right? And it's really sketchy in those things too, like landing. If there's any wind, like you can't control how fast you're touching down in a wicker basket.
And it like tips
really
over.
sketchy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. But so have you ever done this in training? So we take off, and this is in the sim in the 280, and Christian's flying. All of a sudden, like he's like, "Oh, I think there's like something wrong with the elevator," and blah blah. And I'm like, "Okay." So he gives me the controls to try it, and my side works, and he had the elevator jammed. He'd pulled hard enough, it disconnected, right? So now his is jammed, but my side controls just half of the elevator.
Right.
So the plane flies kind of crappy, but it's definitely flyable.
Still hydraulic. I'm like, you're still There's like an actuator.
So I'm like, okay, so I'll take controls and I'll fly, right? And then a minute later, I'm like, oh, now like my ailerons won't work. I'm like, I go pull it. So there's a thing you can pull to then separate, disconnect the ailerons, and it uses like spoilers for roll control, right? And so he pulls the disconnect, and mine won't work, but his works. So now we're flying. I can control the airplane in pitch.
Yep.
And he can control it in roll. So now we're both flying each in our own axis, right?
Yeah.
And then someone's got to control the power. So I'm like, well, I'll do the power since I'm doing pitch. That seems to go hand in hand, right?
Literally.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So I'd never. Have you done that before?
Oh yeah. I think
you got that?
Every airplane I've ever flown, I've gotten that scenario.
Because I thought it was weird because the airplane that we fly, you disconnect the ailerons
Mhm.
and like go into the secondary roll control, which that's the only airplane I've ever flown that has that.
Yeah. So 350s like that also, and super
Anyway,
sloppy.
yeah. So you fly around. It's a good team building exercise. I asked him if
Yeah.
you want to do some trust falls at the end to
Yeah.
solidify the team building we just did. But
Yeah, no, it is. It's good because you've got what was the other one that reminded me of that was similar but different? When you have a trim runaway, and that one's a little bit different because we had to have when you have that elevator up trim runaway in what I can't remember which airplane it was in, but it took so much forward pressure that the guy flying had to have both hands on the yoke pushing forward to counteract the trim, and so the other guy had to do the throttle
yeah,
while you're like fighting the trim. That was another interesting team building
yeah,
because you're
I've had
not
that too.
doing the pitch
Right.
and the throttle at the same time. So yeah, it's kind of good little team building exercise. I still say the best one in the sim that absolutely nobody does and everybody screws up is when they have a sim where you can actually shoot smoke into the cockpit.
Oh, dude, we did that too. That is intense.
It's
That's
intense.
the real deal. Like
that's the real crew.
they should do that at the airlines.
They need to do it more.
That's because the whole like the thing is when you do it and everyone like most airplanes have memory items. The first memory items always right is don your oxygen mask 100% and establish communications. Well, like dude, that's a whole. Everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, hey, you there? Yep, I'm here. Okay, and you start moving through the checklist, but when they flood that thing with smoke, dude, it's like obviously not real smoke, but it's thick enough where it like it does bother your eyes, and you don't really want to breathe it in, and so it was that's good. That's some very valuable.
You know
training.
who every time I've done it, somebody can't hear the other guy because they didn't throw the right switch. They don't have it on mask, or one guy's on speaker, one guy's not.
And it's all, and they don't have hot mic.
Exactly. So it's just Darth Vader the whole time. It's a fiasco. The last time I remember I did it in training, and the guy couldn't hear me the whole time because he didn't have the intercom set up correctly.
Yeah, and you can't do anything.
Yeah,
because that checklist, dude. Those I mean, because at that point, you're splitting duties. Like somebody's flying the airplane.
And somebody's doing everything else,
and somebody's got to do a very involved checklist, right?
Yeah, so I know. Yeah, that's a good one to practice. I think
it's good, but
better than the.
So I've gone to BizJet recurrent in the last 30 days. Airline AQP, which is recurrent, and then next week I have to go to Ops Day, which is another training event in Dallas for the airline, which is like a safety kind of day.
Okay.
So
you're going to be so safe.
I'm in training season right now.
By November, you're going to be
so much training.
I'll be good. You know what training I've got coming up that I'm really looking forward to is upset recovery training.
Oh, are you going to that to APS?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. That's fun.
I'm doing my recurrent. I can't wait. That will be a blast. Okay, should we go down the list of Max's?
Well, we still got to talk. I mean, dude, like it's interesting because every year when you go to these two different trainings, they're so different, right?
Yep.
Where AQP is all this data driven and and it's cool because AQP is cool because you get to do different stuff. Like this year we did ditching. We like ditched in the ocean off of Hawaii, right? Like you don't practice that normally, but they throw all these different things in. You may not even do a V1 cut at 1 year. Like it's just it rotates all this stuff, and a lot of it is data driven from what the data they collect. And unfortunately, the only problem with it is that they collect this data, and then it's not the next year; it's the following year. It gets integrated into training, right? Because they have to collect it all over a year. Then they have to disseminate it all, build the training profiles, blah blah. So it's kind of like
you're doing 2022 stuff.
Yeah, but so if there's something that's really rearing its ugly head, like it's not going to really be trained out for a couple years. So
right,
there's a little bit, but it's really cool. Like it's a great way to do it because it's also like scenario based, and it's really like it feels like we've had days on the line that feel like it was a loft in training. Because it's like, this had to be MEL'd. Now we had to do this. And then the weather did this. And like all these problems happen, which is, what they do. But so it's point being is it's very realistic. Because when you say, oh, this felt like we were in training, like that's the point. Because the training was supposed to prepare you for the real life. Right. But then you go into the BizJet training and it's like, okay, we fly V1 cut. Now this one's hand flown, and then we're going to do the circle and do all the thing. Which for 135, I feel like I haven't done 135 recurrent in a minute.
No,
but
yeah.
you feel like your hands are kind of tight because you also have a PC in there, right? So you're really training for the PC, and you're just kind of going through the motions of all the stuff, right? Whereas Part 91, you end up having extra time invariably to do some other cool stuff. So what we try and do is incorporate stuff that like AQP-ish that you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
But we flew that. Remember we were talking about when we were in Aspen, we were going to have to fly that Hunter Creek arrival.
Oh yeah.
That visual approach to the north, to 3-3. So we did that in the sim.
What'd you think?
That's cool. That's definitely the way to do it. Like versus coming over town and hooking the hard turn and all that. Like it's not a walk in the park at all.
Yeah.
But it does, and there's only one altitude crossing gate. If you guys can we post the PDF for that or something? Or if you look it up, the Hunter Creek arrival in the Aspen, if the winds are going, quote unquote, the wrong way for landing, and you have to land to the north, that's definitely the way to do it. Kind of comes down the backside over town, and then really close in base. But that was cool. That was fun to practice. That's something you would definitely. I wouldn't want to just do it cold turkey with two people that had never done it before, and just be like, all right. I mean, I think you could do it. We were prepared to do it that day after, a lot of on the ground studying of it. But it's definitely.
How did you feel like the visuals? Did you feel like that was pretty good?
It's pretty good.
Like good enough to like.
I think you could do it in the new flight sim that we're anticipating here coming out next month. I think that would be better. The visuals would be better.
Yeah, that'll be super cool. I can't wait for that.
That was cool. And then on this one part in the 280, he's like, all right, we're going to do the NDB approach to whatever. We're in like Moses Lake, Washington. Do you know where that is? It's for Boeing, tests all their stuff on it. And I'm like, cool. And, which is essentially an RNAV approach, right? You're just going to monitor the needle that you're really, no one's paying attention to, because half people nowadays don't even know what it's telling them. So I was like, I'm like, let's do this. And our instructor was a younger than me. And I'm like, have you guys ever, did you guys ever have to do this? And Christian's like, no. Like they talked about it a little bit. We never flew one. And the guy in the back is like, no, I wouldn't even know how to teach that. I'm like, let's try it. Let's try it raw data. And then you can show me the iPad, it shows your track and how close you are on there. And I'm like, we'll try it. And which, again, it's on the 280, the heading select knob has a little inner knob, and you can turn it to track. So you can select a track instead of a heading. So that makes it easier in the wind, right? You don't have to figure out the wind correction. You can just literally get the bearing pointer and then put the track needle on top of it, and it will hold the track.
You didn't mention this when you told me this before, that you were right on the money on this.
Oh,
that little detail. I guess that's another check mark for the 280 versus the 350, though. I guess we don't have that advanced feature.
Do you have flight path angle?
No.
No big deal. But so anyway, I flew dude. When's the last time you flew an NDB approach?
Raw data off a needle.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
I mean, has it been 20 years?
It's probably close. I mean, I did it in a transport category airplane at some point during training, but
at Eagle we had to.
Yeah, I think it was at Eagle. Speaking of Eagle. We were laughing about how did this come up? For those of you who don't know, Max and I both worked at American Eagle, which is an airline that is now called Envoy. That was our first kind of real job after flight instructing back in the early 2000s.
To the regional level.
At the regional level, I flew the Saab 340 and then the Embraer, and then Max was on the Embraer. But back in the day, American Eagle, the interview process at American Eagle was very unique, because American Eagle at the time was wholly owned by American Airlines. And so you would go to Dallas, which if you worked for them, we would call it the Death Star, because it was this massive facility. And you would show up for this interview, and it was a pretty intense 2-day interview. There was a written test.
There was a medical exam?
There was an entire day of medical exams. So day one, you would start with this written test, and then if you didn't pass, get above a certain point on that, then they sent you home. And then there was a HR interview. I think there was a logbook review. There was maybe a technical interview. And if you made it through all those,
where they asked you like legit
real
questions,
like IFR questions.
Yeah,
and where's the final approach
like
fix here, and when are you going to descend, and
like a check ride.
Yeah, it was like an IFR check ride. Then if you made it that far.
Now, just also remember at that time, like I was an intern there, you could interview with 500 total time and 100 multi. There was none of this ATP.
I had 500.
I
had exactly 500 and 100.
Yeah. So again, you're not even at 1,500, 500 hours, right? You show up, you're getting grilled by this guy, you're getting a medical exam, or the whole thing, and then the pinnacle, the crescendo of the whole interview is they throw you in. So they had this sim at the training center that was a KC-135. So it was a 707, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have 100 hours of multi-engine time, and they're like, all right, hop in the captain's seat there. So you hop in this freaking all round dials, 4 thrust lever, and they're like, okay, you're just gonna fly. We're gonna vect you onto this ILS.
Yeah,
you're 900 flap, Boeing with flaps 1, 2, 5, 10, 15, 25, 30, 40, like you're like
50,000 pound airplane.
Like, yeah, you just figure
1,000 times heavier than any airplane you've ever flown.
Yeah, you're just like, okay. They're like, all right, you're live, and you're just like, what the fuck?
You had to like do a hold.
Yeah. You're like twisting the HSI.
We did it where they wrote down all the call outs they wanted us to make, and they're like, all right. The guy like wrote down like 50 call outs, and he's like, okay, make sure you do all these call outs on the sim. Wrote them on the whiteboard, and it goes, who wants to go first?
Listen, kids, this is what it used to be like, okay? 500 hours, you find yourself in a 707 trying to figure out which way's up, entering a hold over an NDB.
Like, so then so somehow past that. And then, the next day they're like, all right, now you're off to AA Medical and you're running on a treadmill. This is for a regional job. I'm going to make $19,000 a year.
Yeah, this is it.
And you're running on a treadmill. They probably did a blood test.
Medical exams.
Yeah.
We're all in our like early 20s.
Yeah.
Or in our early to mid 20s.
What an easy job that must have been.
Taking a VO2 max test. Like, come on. Like, what? The guy,
Yeah. Oh, my God. So... yeah, that was funny. We were reminiscing over the good times. Yeah, they threw me in the sim first. He wrote the call outs down on the whiteboard. Goes, boop, 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 boop. There's the 20 call outs. Okay, who wants to go first? And then I got picked to go first. So I didn't even look at the call outs on the board because he wrote them down and then said, "Let's go." Like,
it's literally an impossible. It's an impossible event. Like it's then you go to Southwest and they had this portion of the interview where you're sitting in the paper tiger like cockpit with an iPad, and they're like, "Okay, you're here and." Now you're going to have to divert to here. What are you going to do? And I'm like, this is it. This is it. And it's the same thing. It's meant to put you under a time pressure and, blah, blah, blah. But it was nothing like that freaking case 707 sim.
I think it's so funny the way, and we've talked about this before in my career, the number one hardest job interview I ever had was to become a flight instructor at Embry-Riddle. And then right behind that was American Eagle. And ever since then, they just get easier and easier.
Yeah, it's easier and easier.
Like, shouldn't it be the opposite?
I know.
It's like, let's do the hardest interview when you have no experience,
Yeah, right. It's good. I hope they start throwing people in the sim again like that. Just be like, all right, here's the call outs. Here's the speeds.
This is the condition lever.
Yeah.
What?
Whatever.
Don't hit the fuel boom switch in the KC-135.
Oh, dude, I forgot. The best part, though, of this corporate recurrent was the distance learning. Or what do they call it? Live learning?
Live learning, yeah.
So usually when you go do a couple days of ground school, and you take the test in ground school, and then you go and you do a few days of sim. It's usually like 4 or 5 days, right? Recurrent. Yep. And so you do the ground school from home. On your computer, like on a WebEx meeting. And I'm like, this is going to be hokey, but I'm not going, stay in a hotel 2 more nights if I don't have to. So I sign up for live learning. And honestly, it's really good. Like I don't feel like I left anything on the table of not being there. Like the way it's presented, and then he like shifts the screen over and he can like draw on the screen on the systems and like the whole thing. It was awesome. So I had this, my wife has a pretty good home office setup, and I'm like, hey, can I use your home office for these 2 days? So I booted her out. I got this big like curved screen, and she has this like weird chair. It's not very comfortable. So I pushed that thing out and I pulled over this big like a big like couch chair kind of thing with like an ottoman. So So I'm sitting there, I'm leaned back in the chair. I got my iPad on my lap, and just watching him talk and have my feet up on the ottoman, looking real comfortable. And then my wife comes in with like a cup of coffee and like this breakfast burrito she made me. So I'm sitting there eating this breakfast burrito, and I wasn't thinking anything of it. And then all of a sudden he stops the class. He's like, "Wait a minute, Max? What exactly is going on over there at your house?" I was like, "What?"
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah, my wife's giving me a back rub right now. Hold on.
I'm like, "Bro, it's been almost 45 minutes since we had our last break."
Yeah, come on.
What do you
Okay,
want?
so that's interesting.
awesome.
I've done the live learning now. We're not endorsing or either vendor here, but so that was with flight safety, right?
Yeah.
And I've also done the distance learning with flight safety, and that's a live class, like you said. I have not done the CAA version of this, but my co-star is in the middle of it right now. That is just modules that you complete on an iPad app. They're not live. There's like 20 or 30 modules. So I'm gonna do this probably for my deal in recurrent coming up. But let me ask you, because I like the live class in some respects, because you get to interact with the other students and kind of get all of that kind of stuff.
And that being said too, because I think what's really important to point out is that I don't know if this was live learning or the instructor we had was really good and like he's very highly reviewed, but there was not a PowerPoint slide in sight. There was no PowerPoint slides.
Oh wow. Okay.
No clicking of the slides, no reading from the slides. He was just, I don't know if he was just doing it from the hip but he went through everything. It was perfect. But dude, what you don't get is he like tracks what people are saying in other returns and like this. Yeah. So that's like that's arguably the most valuable thing.
Exactly.
Recurrent,
right? I agree. That's the most valuable to me is the time spent in there. If you have the right class, if you have the guy that goes, "Oh, well, back on the Learjet," and blah blah, that's the worst.
It's all about the instructor.
Or the people in the class, it just depends on who's in the class too.
Right.
But yeah, so it was interesting because then I was talking to my coworker about it, and we were like, well, what if they gave us like 4 modules a month to complete, and you were just doing it like that, and you were sort of
That's what we do at the airlines too. We have a quarterly.
Yeah. So what do you? So now
module, which is good.
Experiencing both, like, what do you think there? Because I can't compare them yet. Would you rather just do the live learning 2-day deal with a live teacher, or would you rather do like a CBT and do it a few month?
I think the best move would be to do a quarterly systems review of a couple systems or whatever.
Yeah.
Because you know how it is. You just get worn out and you just start tuning it out.
Yep.
And then the culmination of that would be, which is just, rote systems review, like, and then have it, but having it taught in a comedian's voice of no, I'm just kidding. Remember?
Stay tuned.
But then, having a live thing
session
with people in class and says, hey, here's what we're seeing. And Gulfstream issued this MOL for the door closing uncommanded. Has anybody seen that? And blah, 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 stuff like that.
That's what you miss, I think, in those modules is they can't talk about, because that's the thing is a good instructor is pulling up a lot of those, we call them advisory wires with Bombardier, but the same thing, is the manufacturer's alerts that are being passed out and that kind of stuff.
And he goes in on the Gulfstream holds these webinars for each product type, and and he's like sits in on those and takes notes, and then but our instructor was into it, like he was putting forth a lot of effort to
and that's the thing to me that is like, find one great instructor that can do it, and it doesn't matter where he lives, you know. And then it's just like, great, take your best person and have them do it. And I don't know how often they offer it, once a month or whatever, but
it is, but it's perfect because you can have as many people as you want. And then, and it started 8 a.m. Dallas time. So 6 a.m. Phoenix time.
Yeah.
But I don't care. I'm up, and then I'm done at 1, and then you're home, and then you just go about your day. Like, I told, he goes, does anybody have any questions? I'm like, are there plans to offer this for initial? Because I could really get into 2 weeks of live learning at home instead of.
Yeah, no kidding. God, think about how much weight you would not put on.
I know.
That's the worst part of an initial. Good observations there.
Stuff.
Okay, we got a lot to get to here, so let's go. All right,
calm down. We got a lot of time, bro.
Next thing on your note, descend via clearance
Okay.
response.
Yeah, I meant
All right,
to. I was
set
going
me
to
up.
ask you this.
Okay.
I was going to ask you this, and then I was like, oh, I should probably ask you this in the show.
Okay.
So, all right. So you say you get like vectored off an arrival, right, for traffic or whatever, and then
Yep.
and then you like, okay, clear direct here, and okay, clear direct here, and then you get okay, and descend via the whatever arrival,
Mhm.
and it's clear that you are not going to be able to
Yeah.
at least make the first fix or whatever,
Yeah.
right? You're just not in a position anymore to descend via. What would you do?
I just say, hey, we're not going to make it at this. We can give you especially if there's a speed too. There's like a
Okay, but do you read? No, the exact. I want you to tell me
Mhm.
exact radio response. He says, okay, and now you're cleared direct to LAXB to descend via the whatever arrival.
Okay, this is what in real life. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, clear to the fix, descend via the arrival. Then we're going to punch it in, and then we're going to look, and the VNAV is going to tell us, well, you need to do 200 feet per minute to do it. And then I'm going to come back on the radio, and I'm going to be like, hey, center, we're going to be unable to cross, Hoxie at 210 or
See,
whatever.
I feel like that's what everybody does. But
Yeah.
but okay, so I was in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
That happened, and I was like, dude, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, we are not going to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And he reads back the clearance, right? Okay, descend via whatever. And then he's trying to jump in, and it was freaking slammed. It was SoCal. I think we're going to Orange County, and it was just slammed. He could not get it where to edge. We're going to cross the fix high without ever getting relief, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude. And so what I've always done in that scenario is I'm like, because when you read it back, you've accepted the clearance
Mm-hmm.
that you cannot comply with. So
Right.
why would you read it back?
Well, no.
would say-
no.
I'd
I
say-
guess in my situation, in my scenario, you may not know that you can't comply.
Okay, that's true. If you don't know, but if it's obvious you cannot comply.
Okay.
Like-
Okay. That's a different question. Then yeah, I would say unable when you get that clearance. You'd say,
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to make whatever
And see, in
your
our case
constraint
too, it
is,
was
you
or
can't make.
and they didn't say descend via or direct to then descend via. They
Mhm.
said clear direct whatever, and I went direct and I'm looking. I'm like, okay, it's 20 miles. We need to lose 90,000 feet. Like this is going to work.
The
And
61 rule.
and then I was flying. I'm like, we can't do that. But he reads back the clearance. He's trying to get relief, and I'm like, and we never get relief, right? And he talked to her, and it was cool. The controller's like, yeah, no, I knew I cleared your layers. It's all good. But I'm like, why would you accept a clearance you cannot
Mhm.
comply with? Like, why would you do that? So
Yeah, it's obvious. No,
I was
that's
just
a
curious,
really
like,
good
what-
point. That is a good point. Yeah, I think that we're if you know for sure, obviously, yeah. But I think in my scenario, it's typically like you don't know, and you got to punch it in, and then you're looking at it, and
and then
so,
you get relief,
and
right?
then you're
But
like,
it's just
"Oh,
like
this
'cause I
isn't gonna
talked to him
work."
about it. I'm like, dude, why did you accept?
Yeah.
I told you I couldn't make the cross.
Yeah.
Like, don't accept it, because now you put us in a
Mhm.
gray area of like having to do paperwork, and
That's a good
just say like I'm unable to
Yeah.
descend via. We're too high. You're gonna have to give
And
us
that's
some
a good
other
lesson
clearance.
for any young aviator out there. When you get a clearance that you can't comply with, and you just tell them, yeah, we can't do that, unable. It's never once been a problem. They're like,
Dude,
"Oh,
I
okay."
had-
Worst
I've
case,
had
they're
to
going to
be a
be like,
problem.
well, okay, you fly this heading. But it's like, it's not a big deal if you can't comply with a clearance that they give you. It's never a big deal. You might have to do something different, but it's not like they're going to get mad or you're going to be in trouble. I can't tell you how many times I've watched somebody dive bomb an airplane to try and make a clearance,
Yeah,
a
right.
crossing.
For what?
And it's
someone
like,
else.
what, to bail these guys out? And meanwhile, the people in the back are super uncomfortable. It's just just be like, no, we're not doing that.
Don't
It's
be
their
afraid to
problem.
say no if you
Yeah.
can't do it. Like they don't, I had that problem though, like where we were it was a whole bunch of weather in Phoenix. This is in a corporate jet with my buddy, with Mike,
Mm-hmm.
a long time ago in the G3, and we're painting and we keep deviating, need more deviation. The guy, like, he's like freaking out, the controller. He's like, I can't give you any more right. Like you're going to conflict with the arrival or whatever
Mhm.
it was. Right. We're like, well, we're not flying into a thunderstorm. So what do you want to do here? It's like, well, I'm going to have to declare an emergency for you. And I was flying. I remember Mike's pretty, will hold his ground. And he goes,
Yeah.
you do whatever you got to do, pal. We're going right 30. I was like, yes.
You do what
That
you
was-
do.
That
I'm
guy
gonna do
was
what I'm gonna do.
tripping out though, because the controllers are just people too, and
Yeah.
they get like overwhelmed and like they're
And
not.
they can't see, and
You're
you're
not
just
God.
yeah,
You just gotta save your own ass.
exactly. You're not going to fly through a storm.
It was funny.
That's good. Oh, that's good discussion. Good point. I love these notes, Max. You really got it. I'm really excited to hear what this next one is here. Ass pad guy.
Oh. So I was in this class, I was in this class, like non-aviation thing with my wife and this whole thing, right? And we're sitting there, and it was like these really hard plastic chairs that they had arranged in this circle, and they're really uncomfortable. And like the first day, I'm like, oh, I'm like moving around, you know? So the next day, homeboy sitting next to me shows up with one of those like pads you sit on, you know? He like unrolls it. It's like collapses down. He sits on it. And I'm like, so we sit there after I say, I'm like, hey, I'm like, so how did you just happen to have that pad that you brought to class today? He goes, I use it for work. And I said, is that right? I'm like, you a pilot? He looks at me. He's like, how did you know? I'm like, nobody produces an ass pad in such short notice unless you sit on that thing while you're flying.
I think I know exactly what I'm going to do.
We were dying laughing. Yeah, it was really funny.
Pulled it right out.
We
of
had
the slide
actually some pretty good jokes, and it was pretty funny. But
that's hilarious. Did it have the little cutout for the spine in the back?
No, it was just like one that collapsed down. I was like, let me see that thing.
I used to, when I started flying lessons at age 14, I had a cushion because I wasn't tall enough to see the dash. I had to bring a little cushion in my flight bag.
I'm trying. A lot of people succumb to the ass pad at the airlines. I'm trying to hold strong.
Okay, a couple more things. 787 book.
Oh yeah, so you know how we had the people that have written in your dad about the pump on the
never ending.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I think as on my Europe travels, I was trying to front load some content. So I figured out how to rent books from the library and put them on Kindle now, which is very convenient. So I saw that and I was like, oh, and so I read that whole book about the whole development of 787. Dude, everyone is like, why could they just replace the 737? They should have built a new airplane, the 797, blah, blah, blah. Dude. And then you're like, okay. And you look at it, you're like, well, Gulfstream and Bombardier, everyone else seems to come out with 100 new airplanes all the time, right? And Boeing can't seem to do it, like, except for once every 20 years, it seems like, right? What a like monumental financial undertaking of a new airliner is insanity. It's insane. And the 787 was so insane because there was so much new stuff. Like that 787 has no pneumatic system, right? There's no bleed air anything, which means non-pneumatic starter. It has pumps for the packs. It has electric starts for the motors. Like all the hydraulic pumps are electrically driven. Everything is electric. It's all electric. It has to produce like multitudes more power than it. But my point is, you read that book and it's like this huge undertaking. You know what the break even on that airplane is?
In like what? How many units? They have to produce?
How many units they have to sell before they've made back their investment in development?
250.
Upwards of 2,000. Like, how do you? Like, that's insane. Like something's wrong with that, right?
That's unbelievable.
That's years, dude. They're like just getting there.
2,000.
It's like it was like
even sell. I mean,
the estimate was like 1,500 to 1,900 or something like that. I don't, but it was somewhere right. I remember the 1,900 one. And I was like, oh my god, like that's years and years. And they like have the wings. The wing box is built in Japan and flown over in that converted 747, the Dreamlifter, and like the parts are built in Italy and here and there, and they bring them all and put them all together. It's crazy, dude.
Okay, well. Here's an interesting fact. Would you like a little interesting fact?
Yeah, please.
There are approximately 1,078 Boeing 787 Dreamliners in service globally.
Yeah, right, that's what I'm saying. It's crazy.
Like they haven't even broken even on it?
No. And that was like, and this book ended this was just a development. And like the end of the book was like, and then it was certified. The end. Like there was none of the like lithium ion battery problems and like
the guy's like, I can't keep writing about this thing. I gotta just. It says right now there are 1,927 orders for the plane right now. So
so
they're on track. But
so it's between
smokes.
13. The estimate. So they spent $32 billion on the program, and the estimates for the number of aircraft sales needed to break even vary between 1,300 and 2,000. And in September of 2024, the 787 has received 1,927 orders. And then you look at Airbus, right? And the 380, which was a huge losing, money loser, right? They never caught on enough to ever, and it's subsidized by the governments of the EU. But it's just, gave me a greater appreciation to why these new airliners don't come out all the time, and the risk that it is to the only private company that builds, or that is Embraer subsidized by the
Brazilian government. I don't know, but I mean, I mean, it sure seems like most of the manufacturers are. I mean, it's
Bombardier was,
I think
right?
it's definitely gotten money. I mean, you'd think. It's just, well, it's just, how did everybody make money?
Yeah, Embraer was founded by the Brazilian government.
Yeah. So how did everybody make money 50 years ago making all these planes? And they were cranking out there was a million different models.
Yeah, right. There was all the DC-10 and the LT-11.
Now the market is completely captured between two groups. And Boeing, as we know, is incredibly lightweight and efficient. They move quickly. They are innovators.
Driven by engineers.
Yeah. I mean, so, if they can't do it, then nobody can. I was just watching that rocket return and get caught by those chopsticks on the tower thing. The only thing I can think of the whole time is like, what is everyone at Boeing doing with these videos are coming out?
Yeah, right.
And you're just like,
the best is listen to Elon Musk explain the system before it's even done. He's like, there's a approximately 50% chance that this will fail and end up in a huge fireball. You're just like, and which is the truth. Like, at least he's realistic about it. He's done with all the development. He's like, we're going to crash a lot of rockets before we get this right. It's just the way it is.
Oh, it's the same. I mean, remember how many times they crashed those rockets when they were trying to land them on the pads?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was the same thing with that.
Yeah, but now they got it. So
what a deal! But that 787 really is. It's not even that new anymore. But I just didn't know that much about it, and it was quite interesting.
Max, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about one of my favorite parts of aviation. One of the most, speaking of efficiency, streamlinedness, and that is our incredible NOTAM system that we have in the United States. Just the pinnacle of clarity.
It's just easy to understand.
Ease of understanding. Our current president came to town kind of on a last minute, and they issued some TFRs. And you know what? Before I go any further, I want to give a shout out to Vocus. We use this service called Flight Risk in our operation, which is, I can't remember if I've showed you this, but basically it pulls our trips in from Airplane Manager, and it knows what's on the schedule, and it's constantly monitoring for those trips if anything's going wrong, bad weather, NOTAMs, anything. And I got an email from Vocus Flight Risk, and it said, "Hey, TFR coming up." And I'm like, "What? I haven't seen anything about this." And we didn't get emails until the next day from all the normal sources, like AOPA and the Scottsdale Tower and everything.
You pay for this service?
Yeah. I mean, it's worth it. It's good for like maybe $1,500 a year. Then it just plugs right in and it just runs in the background the whole time. It pops up in Airplane Manager and it's like integrated. It's pretty cool. I'm not sponsored to say that, but it's really cool. Anyways,
not yet.
That's right.
Put it on the list.
So anyways, so I'm like, oh, okay, and then I like texted it to our like Scottsdale pilots group that we have text. And of course I misread the date at first. And I'm like, oh, I don't think this affects our flight. And then we looked at it some more. We're like, no, actually this is the wrong day because it's, Zulu. Of course they display the dates in Zulu because, why wouldn't you? And then comes back into the local, and then that's confused. And then it started to affect me. Then it's going to start to affect you. And then of course, after we get this thing figured out, when are the times? Then guess what? Oh, we're doing a time
they change it. Yeah, we're up. We're going to move it up.
Yeah, and then if anyone has flown with a presidential TFR, and this is obviously more relevant to business aviation, especially Part 91, because 135 and 121 usually are not as affected. But there's a big ring, a 30-mile ring in the TFR, and that's to keep like flight training and other stuff away. And then there's a 10-mile like inner ring, and the inner ring is where unless you're on a security program, you cannot fly in there. And so that moves around wherever the president is. So where he's giving a speech at the arena, then it's over the arena. Oh, now he's at his hotel, so then the ring's over the hotel. So they have these different. Now, how do they define these rings? They just tell you a VOR and a radial and a DME. and they have sort of drawn them on this super low resolution map. You can't zoom in on. They're not labeled.
But the thing is, they're all completely overlapping each other.
They all overlap each other.
Ridiculous.
You can't see, and you don't know when the times are. You can't read anything on it. It's unbelievably bad. And it's like, this is the one thing that like is important. Like, let's make this easier to understand. And ForeFlight wasn't loading it for some reason. It wasn't coming into the system. So then you're like,
it was in ForeFlight, right? But it's so dense.
Like, and it's so dense, and it's just, it was
idiotic.
It's so bad. And
then the choice of hotel selection that the homeboy stays at is terrible. He picks this hotel. This is the second time that is between the Deer Valley and Scottsdale airports. It shuts the airports down.
And Sky Harbor. It's like they looked at a map and they're like, what is the hotel that we could stay in that could shut the 3 most busy airports down in the Valley? And it was like it was the Hilton Squaw Peak, which is like a really
terrible
old,
hotel too.
I'm like, it's literally like
last time you stayed at the Princess, remember? And that screwed everything up too.
Yeah,
that's like right by there.
Bad. So, anyways, yeah, that system is so jacked, and they got to get it together. Label they have all in the text description. They have like section D, is from this time to this time, but then they don't go and label it on the map, so you don't know these rings.
I called you, remember? And I'm like, what is the deal? You're like, I've actually plotted this on a chart.
I had to plot it on a chart to confirm because there was no other way to do it because they don't label it.
What chart? How did you physically plot it? That's what I'm curious about.
I figured out how to do it in ForeFlight. You can like type it in and then find the thing, and then it was stupid. It's like
well, at least you had the resource of the Scottsdale Tower to fall back on, right? You could just call them, and they'll.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna call Scottsdale Tower just to make sure, like, because I had to move our airplane to a different airport, and like we had to come out of pocket here to accommodate this. So I'm like, I'll call the tower just to make sure we're all on the same page here. I called the tower and I'm like, hey, this TFR, and he's like, yeah, I'm too busy. You're just gonna have to read it yourself. Like, I can't help you. Just click. I'm like, just 2 seconds. Don't we all want to avoid like issues here, And no help.
Yeah, that was bad. It was so hard to figure out. And then you figure it out, but the problem is you don't have full 100% confidence that you have this figured out.
Your situation was a little bit different because it was holding me back because I was departing. You were trying to arrive before it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so even if you plan on like, well, the TFR starts at 5 and you're going to land at 3:30, but like, what's to say they're not just going to be like, well, you know what? The president wants to go to the hotel an hour early.
Yeah, like, I was beating it in by like 45 minutes.
Yeah,
and I was
but it's like, that's such a gamble because like, what do you do? I mean, I know a lot of people listening to this are going to be like, dude, don't complain. Like if you were based in Palm Beach when Trump was in Mar-a-Lago, I mean, that was like shut down every weekend for like 4 years. So like, I get it. A lot of people had it way worse than us, but it's still.
Yeah.
Get it together.
It's dumb. That's bad.
Yeah. All right. Last thing. You and I have recently discovered our new favorite podcast, Kill Tony, which is
I thought you were talking about Talk Tua.
No, I'll leave that. That's she probably makes more in like her first ad deal was probably more than we've ever made in all the years that we've done this. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, so Kill Tony, which is a funny stand-up comedian show, hard to explain, worth watching. Definitely like very raw comedy. So like
it's a YouTube show.
Don't listen to it with your kids in the car, I would say, for sure. But anyways, so it's a podcast and it's a live YouTube show, but then they have it in podcast format. So I had to airline to my airplane a couple weeks ago. So it's a Sunday morning. I get on the airliner and I've got my iPad. And on American, you can like, they have the little like clip where you can clip your iPad to the thing. So I was watching football, NFL, Sunday morning. So I've got the NFL going. I've got my AirPods in. And then, but I've got my AirPods hooked up to my phone, which is playing Kill Tony. So the people sitting next to me, if anyone sitting next to me looks at me, they're thinking, oh, the guy's watching football. So
you're dying laughing.
I am just dying laughing. Kill Tony at like the dumbest parts. And if you were to look, like it doesn't correlate to anything. Like there's nothing. It's on a commercial for
They're on a
Geico.
timeout, yeah.
Yeah, they're in a timeout. I'm dying. I'm just laughing so hard. And anyone sitting near me has been like, dude, this guy is losing it. Or thinking that I had some huge bet on the game or something. I don't know. But I'm like wiping my eyes with tears. Bengals are kicking a field goal. It's just like, what's going on?
Kill Tony is the best.
Yeah. So good show. So yeah. Okay. Anything else to get to?
No.
We covered a lot of ground here.
Let's start a new list.
Yeah. New note. Should we sell
getting
access?
to be a lot of pressure.
45. It took us 45 minutes to get through the note. We still got 3/4 of the show to go. This is a lot here. All right.
Well, that does it for.
Yeah, that's gonna do it. Sorry to everyone that wrote in on your emails. Tough luck.
Episode 2.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Speaking of long and drawn out things, let's talk about Chapter 11 of Hard Landing.
Oh my God.
Which was excellent.
See this mark on my head right here?
Yeah.
Falling asleep and
Max
cracking
fell
myself
asleep
with
and
the
then
iPad.
iPad cracked him over the head and woke him up. I was like, are you ready yet? What's going on? So great chapter that kind of reveals, I would say, the management side of things when it comes to labor negotiations and all of the pressures on management from bankers and hostile takeovers and unions. And it just reinforces to me like the fact that like I would never want to be the CEO of an airline. That's just a thankless job. So this chapter talked about Eastern Airlines and Frank Borman, who was the CEO there, and
former
how,
astronaut.
and former astronaut. That's right. And how he had to continually go to labor to get cuts. And it was like, oh, I promise you give me a 10% cut and I promise you'll get it back in 2 years. And he just have to kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And they got into really dire financial straits and had to get basically the banks essentially said, look, you got to get 20% cut from all your labor groups or we're cutting off your credit.
We're done. And then which would instantly force them to bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So the options were what they were saying. They were going to either fix it, sell it, or tank it.
Yeah.
Which would be, get the concessions and move on, sell it, obviously, or tank it was declaring bankruptcy.
Yeah. And so the chapter I thought was just really insightful into how that happens. Because I think as a pilot or in labor, you just think that management they're just trying to get the best deal they can. And they're just like, well, they're not going to give anything because they don't want to give any, they don't want to show weakness. And part of that was true, but it really shows you the other external factors that may be on management that you may not realize when it comes to like banks cutting off credit and like other things. Now, certainly that chapter it focused on Charlie Bryan, who was one of the union leaders and a board member, and how like there was some ego stuff in play in that between the CEO and leadership. So I don't know what stood out to you.
Well, just and yeah, I mean, just how like at the end of the day, when all the roads meet, it ends up being this meeting until literally like an all night meeting till 4 a.m. of everybody trying to figure this out. And then like you had basically the machinists, which encompassed all the ground workers and mechanics and everybody, the pilots and the flight attendants, and that was who they were dealing with. And and then somebody will come to the table and concede, and then it's like, oh, and then it goes and it changes the game then because now there's 2 left, and then if another one gets on board, now there's just 1 left, and basically it's all on you, and you're going to tank kill the whole company because of this, and they're like, so it's just there's a lot of gamesmanship in all of this and running with the board of directors and the whole thing, which you see now again, like when you read this book, it changes your perspective of things that you see going on right now.
Yep.
With like Spirit, right? Oh, if we don't renegotiate this debt, they might declare bankruptcy this week, and then we got an extension. The stock,
what a miracle!
The stock goes up 50%, and now we're in talks with Frontier, and then you see like this whole thing with Elliott and Southwest, and their big push to change out board members and the CEO and and they finally figured it out, right, and settled on what they're going to do and replace some of the board members, and the CEO stays, and this and that. And it's just like it's It's a crazy business. And the thing about it is, it's like, even when you look at it from another perspective, like when you look at it in the options market, like the options are priced cheap on airline, because nobody really wants to play with like this airline business, you know. And I do a little bit because I feel like I'm in it, like literally live it, so I can understand it enough to like feel the pulse of what's going on sometimes, and use some of that intuition to then make a play. But and then you go to look at the options compared to like a tech company, and you're like, I guess nobody's really interested in this market segment in speculative investing. It's pretty funny.
Speaking of investing, do you see NBAA, our big business aviation trade convention was last week? Do you see Wheels Up is like getting this whole new fleet order, and we're going to modernize our fleet, which they just took brand new King Airs like 5 years ago. They're going to modernize their 5-year-old King Airs to, Phenoms and Challengers. And it's like, and every time I read this, I'm like, who is giving you the money to do this?
I know.
Where is this money coming from? Because I guess there's just so much money out there that needs to be deployed. I don't get it. I mean, it's the same question we've had all through hard landing. Where's this money come from? For these these takeovers, and that was one other interesting thing from the chapter. I didn't exactly understand it, but when you read that thing, how they were Texas Air was going to buy Eastern, but they were going to use the Eastern's cash to buy it. I was just like, I don't understand.
I was going to pay for half of the deal. It was like a $600 million deal.
Yeah.
And they're raising 300 of it from the. And then the best was that Frank Lorenzo was going to get $20 million as a what was the term it used?
I can't remember. Some
like
sort of
putting the deal together or something.
Fee or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was the one who was approached for the deal in the first place.
And blood in the water, and they ended up doing the deal because they were the only ones that would pay. And it was
they shopped it, and then they were at the that was it
at the deadline.
Yeah, at the end of the day,
one buyer.
But the other thing that's kind of interesting about this book is you've always known like these airlines that have had these long-standing hubs, like Newark, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was Continental, and then United, and so it's just kind of interesting. You see how the system got built today and why these hubs are where they are and things like that. And to read about how it really came from another airline they just bought that was started up there in the first place. And it's just crazy. The evolution of it, even though I'm reading it for the second time, it's like it's the first time because it's so long ago.
You see,
my perspective and where I'm at in my career is so different than when I read it the first time. It's
you have more context. You can kind of like when we read it in our early 20s after we flew the 707 sim in American Eagle. It was a different. Like you're like,
just slap that ILS like a boss.
That's right.
Missed to the NDB to hold.
But you're right about the hub thing. Like I remember when we were with the American family and we had Chicago, St. Louis, and Dallas as hubs, like all three in a row. I mean, they're all like 250 miles away from each other in a straight line. You're like, what are we doing here? We got the Mississippi River tied up. Anyways, so another great chapter. And
but what's interesting too is that like all of this book is a talk of all these airlines consolidating and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of feels like now there's not very much to consolidate left.
Yeah. So like it goes back to our conversation with Boeing and Airbus.
Like,
it's just like now it's just you're so big, no one can compete, and you don't have to. I mean, your incentive to innovate is probably less. I mean, there's still a decent amount of competition. Do you think that? I feel like we're in a pretty good place right now with the 3 legacy carriers. I think it's good to have 3. Like I would, less than that would probably not be good.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just so different than and it is kind of because we remember too. Remember when it was like America West and you had all these like smaller airlines and stuff, and it was just and everything. The airlines had a lot more personality,
Tons.
like between airlines.
Midwest Airlines. I mean, just think about all that little airline. Northwest. Yeah, there's a ton. It was an interesting time.
The next version of this book is gonna be a lot more boring, I think.
Well, we had a listener write in and ask. He's like, "Well, is there hard landings too? Like, what about
being written?"
Yeah, it's be a good one. All right. Anything else on this chapter?
No.
Okay. Another great chapter. The book's called Hard Landing. If you haven't read it, in the show notes, there will be a link you can jump on. Grab it on your Kindle, grab it in paperback, whatever you want. I suggest paperback because if it falls on your forehead while you're reading it will not leave a bruise. If you're, sleeping in the recliner in the crew room or something. So, all right, moving on, Maxwell. Let's take a look at a couple of reviews. We love when folks write reviews on the show, honest reviews. Sometimes our reviews are not positive. Sometimes they are, and we'll read them all. We'll shoot you a sticker if you write us a review. Here's the deal. Write your review, then send us an email with your mailing address, and then we'll drop a couple in the mail. I've got the fake it till you make it stickers, and I've got breaking news for you, Max. They are now available on our website for purchase, along with our new 21.5 hats.
Yeah. Mine's currently misplaced, but I'm sure it'll turn up.
This is the bottom of the lake?
No, not this one.
If you go to 215podcast.com, there is a new shop button you can click on. We have black, white, and navy trucker hats with a cool new patch design, and the fake it till you make it stickers available for purchase. Just $6 for the stickers. We'll get them in the mail.
So the hats are actually very nice.
The hats are high end.
I would say they're a premium product.
It's a premium product. We always go premium with our products. I hate cheap stuff. I just won't wear it. I only will make branded stuff that I want to use. So if we're doing a cup, it's going to be Yeti. If we're going to do, a shirt, it's going to be a premium brand. This is True Linkswear brand, which is one of my favorites. It's what we use for our uniforms. And it's also my favorite golf brand. It's really cool. So check those out. The hats are $60. That includes shipping in the US. Look, it's a great way to support the show and get some cool merch. I've already been approached in the terminal 2 times by wearing that hat. Both guys came up and said, that show's not that great. We moved on.
The hosts sound like idiots.
Those hosts kind of don't know what they're talking about, but no. Anyways, good stuff. Why don't you read the reviews? There's an extra email I forgot I needed to add to the mailbag. So
all right,
I'm going to look that up.
Best Pilot Podcast from Commando's Ammo. I'm subscribed to at least 4 different aviation podcasts, and this one by far is the best. Every episode is packed to the brim with great advice and even better stories. Sometimes even things you didn't know you needed, like how to incorporate bidding into your kids' chores. Keep up the great work, guys. A slap of aviation wisdom and laughs from _lingo. I've absolutely loved tuning into Max and Dylan on the 21.5 podcast. These 2 professional pilots have created something special, sharing their wealth of experiences, fantastic stories, and invaluable advice. Their episodes are packed with real-world insights, and I've gone through their entire catalog with great joy. Every episode is a slap in the best way possible. Earth-shattering content that leaves you eager for more. Whether it's fake it till you make it moments or practical reminders like use it or lose it, Max and Dylan never fail to deliver. And when they jump on a soapbox, you know it's going to be both educational and entertaining. The podcast is a must-listen for anyone passionate about aviation. And as always, Dylan, who would you say that these reviews and comments are brought to you by? Oh, no one.
Our listeners. That's who they're brought to you by.
Listeners, sorry.
So thank you for bringing those to us. Sorry, I was reading an email here. We got to get on here. Let's jump over to the mailbag maps. We've got so much to get to, and you know that the mailbag is brought to you by Advanced Aircrew Academy. If you visit aircrewacademy.com, you can see all of the offerings that they provide for your flight department. If you remember back in episode 86, which I think was a year or 2 ago, we try and hit this every October. We do a winter ops module with them. You and I did it, and then we talked to their subject matter expert about it. And so you can get all the benefit of that knowledge. You know it's coming. I was just flying over the Rockies a couple days ago and noticed the snow was already out there. You'll be de-icing before you know it. Check out that module, aircrewacademy.com. Time to get tuned up. When do you do it? What would you say will be, it'd be fun, Max? Like, we should set an over-under on your first de-ice.
Let's see.
I'm going to say, assuming that you're flying.
Would it count if they've already de-iced the airplane while it was at the gate? Sometimes they'll pre-de-ice it.
No, you have to be sitting in the airplane and getting sprayed off. I'm going to say, I'm going to go with December 3rd.
Oh, really? None in
I just have a feeling that it's the holidays, the end of November. I kind of have a feeling you're not going to be working a ton.
You're probably right about that. Yeah, I don't know. I got a Chicago overnight, some Seattle, Boise. Who knows?
December 3rd. Okay, we'll have to keep track of it. Put
All
that,
right.
add that in your note the first time you
All right, I
it
will.
down.
I will.
Over under December 3rd. Okay. Mailbag. So first off, we got to do a little housekeeping, and we got an email, and he added a little context on a couple chapters ago when we did the book club, and we were talking about the United Airlines 570, which was those pilots that were in training. And in the book, made it sound like, and he kind of issues us a little bit of a correction. So I'll read that. But just to set the context, this was when there was labor strife at United, and there were pilots in training. And so he said, I'm a longtime listener and nearly always enjoy your podcast. I'm also a member of the United Airlines 570 you referred to when reviewing. I think the chapter is called Flying the Line in episode 142. We are not all in the retirement home or passed away. As a 40-year airline pilot, I honestly do not think you realize how insulting and infuriating it is to hear younger pilots bat around the term scab. The United 570 were not scabs. We interviewed early on and were hired as UAL new hires. We, at the time, were only vaguely aware of the UAL plans for the strike breaking. We went to school and were qualified on various equipment types at United. In my memory, I do not remember anyone in this group ever saying they planned to cross a picket line. ALPA was involved in briefing, and crossing a picket line, for the most part, was something that we didn't and wouldn't ever consider. Granted, we were young, and we were told by Dick Ferris himself that if we didn't come to work when we were told, we would be fired, and he'd personally blackball us in the industry. I remember him saying, I'll make sure you never fly a transport jet again. When only a handful, I think it was 4, crossed and crushed their strike, not only were we the first hired, but the first fired. Only a judge's decision forced United to call us back, and the callback letter stated clearly, if a higher court overturns this ruling, you will once again be terminated. We lost our seniority numbers, so we were only reinstated years down the road. By the time of the recall, many of us had departed for other carriers. Please know that if someone uses the word scab around anyone from my generation, you'll need to pick your teeth off the concrete. For as an airline pilot, there is no worse term or insult you can use. Yeah, and then he goes on to say, I'm proud of my involvement in the UAL 570 and will not sit by and allow their accomplishment to be sullied. So I think his correction was when we mentioned that. I think the book made it sound more like, and we may have inferred that those pilots were in training to break the strike. And so I think what he's setting the record straight, that they were in training, but they were not intending to break the strike, if that makes sense.
Correction received.
Yeah. So thanks for setting us straight.
No,
we
good.
appreciate
that's
it.
What, we certainly don't want to convey, and it's nice to hear because the author of Hard Landings wasn't there. We weren't.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
he was. So
yeah, and he's right. You definitely, the term scab was used incorrectly. I remember hearing it incorrectly used. It is a powerful term, and just reserved for those that cross a picket line. So great. We love these type of emails. Helps us to understand the context. Like that's why we've been reading this book, is to understand what has happened. So to hear from folks that were there is very helpful. So thanks for writing in. We really appreciate it. All right. Next email. You want to read this one? Well, it's a Southwest one, so you should read this one.
All right. Hi, Dylan and Max. Love your podcast. I just discovered podcasts, and specifically yours, since driving to work at our new Nashville pilot base since May. I'm working my way through the shows and thoroughly enjoy them. I'm currently a captain at Southwest and a DPE. Few comments. It was nice he had Casey Murray on a few weeks ago. He said it best when he said, you can't keep 11,000 pilots happy all the time. While I certainly have more trust and faith in SWAPA 2.0 than SWAPA 1.0, I still feel they dropped the ball on some issues. The interview with Seth Lake, who was also a DPE, right, was great. But just to clarify, if you look at FAA Order 800-95C, it says that the basic qualification for being a DPA, you must have served in the 3 years prior to application for at least 12 months as a laundry list of positions, such as 121, 135 check airman, 141 chief instructor, assistant chief, check pilot, part 21, 121 ADP, part 140, blah, 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 all these other positions, or given 200 hours of dual instruction towards ratings. The past 3 years restriction the FAA put in has eliminated many highly qualified pilots that don't meet those specific currencies. I like what you said earlier this year about the lifespan versus health span of pilots. As an overweight, over 50 airline pilot, I struggle to eat right and get enough exercise and rest when on the road. It seems that it is much harder now to recover from injury or illness, as well as just recovering from the disrupted schedule and changes to circadian rhythm that crew scheduling doesn't always seem to understand. Now for the most important for last, long sleeve shirts. No way. Every time I fly with a long sleeve pilot, there's almost always something that's just not right about the experience. Caveat that with pilots with tattoos, it seems to make sense. Great show and looking forward to hearing more great information and entertainment. Very respectfully, Kevin.
Is that what VR stands for?
I think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't bet my life on that.
Yeah. There's no way to know for sure.
We'll have to consult ChatGPT about this.
All right. Next email. It says, I'm sure someone else has answered this, but my experience regarding runway changes has been vastly different on the 2 Delta narrow-body fleets I've flown. Oh, this is in reference to that Delta sidestep. Yep.
I don't think we read this one.
Okay. In the MD-88, runway changes or sidestep were considered a non-event. Airbus 320, it's basically never done. Our checklists have change items that have to be accomplished with a runway change, but there is a note stating the captain can waive those items under specific conditions. Personally, I've done 1 sidestep in the past 18 months on the baby bus. Probably misleading to call it that given how far out we were. I'm fine with declining a sidestep given how infrequently we do them. Additionally, our in-house safety publications have had numerous articles over the past year about events that went sideways or why they think it's a bad idea. Currently, we seem to be shying away from them. When I was doing it every leg into O'Hare with a stabilized approach gate of 500 feet AGL, I didn't think twice about sidestepping. Not so much now. And that's from our boy Kamal.
Yeah.
Fellow Embry-Riddle alum.
Love it.
Shout out to Kamal. Thanks for the email.
I'm still no more clear on the subject, but I mean that it is besides that it is a real rat's nest of
yeah. Sounds like it's a pain in the butt in the
A320. I think what it means is the more antiquated aircraft you fly, the easier it is to sidestep.
I remember sidestepping in the Saab in LAX because it was so we didn't even have an FMS. So it's like you literally would tune up, two clicks, nav, boom, over. There was no. We had the little round dial with the sliding V speed things too. You didn't have to recalculate.
Isn't it funny though how something so simple has become so complex?
I know.
Some airplanes like, we got to reload it.
It's like you just look out the window. All right.
Well, that's the thing too, dude. Like, so I'm thinking about this in the 280. What do you think would happen if you just sidestepped and you didn't reprogram?
Would you get some sort of like runway
wrong
alert?
Runway?
Yeah, exactly.
Be like yelling at you the whole way.
Yeah, right.
Or not a runway. It freaks out. So I don't know that I'd go around though.
Yeah,
I'll have to think about that. All right. Anyway, what's next? Hello, Dylan and Max. Your 10/1/24 episode included fond memories of the training traumas that seem to be inherent with being an airline pilot. I published a book on the subject in 2021. I would be glad to send some copies for your review because maybe listeners would be interested. I will note that pro pilots mostly will find the material business as usual and not want to relive the experience. Those who are moving up the ranks may benefit the most. Be happy to send you, or happy if you'd simply provide a link to the book, perhaps in the show notes. Send me a mailing address. I'll send some complimentary hard copies to you. I enjoy your show, David.
Okay, I reached out to David. He is sending me some copies. Max and I will not be opening and reading them due to the trauma and PTSD that we do not want to relive.
Sim that we.
But I will be giving them away to some of our younger listeners. So if you are a CFI or somebody that is getting ready to get their first big turbine job, shoot me an email. And I'll send you a copy. I don't know how many we're going to get.
Yeah, they have to write in with their review of the book, right?
Of course, yeah. That's the deal. Is you got to let us know.
You didn't say that was the deal.
I was getting there.
You're just giving away books just on a whim like this.
No, I was getting
Santa Claus.
Yeah,
over here.
It's Christmas time. Is there? You know how you can call collect on a phone on a little payphone? You could call collect.
Yeah.
Could we ship something collect like that? Cash on delivery, COD, right? Is that what it's called?
because the United States Postal Service developed a specific postage for like sending books that makes
media
it really
mail.
inexpensive.
I was going to
What's the
say,
matter with
we'll
you?
send you the book, but then you have to like pay the postman in cash.
I think sometimes you forget how lucrative this show is.
That's right. We're just going to cover the cost. That's right. That's right. All right. Next email. Thanks again for everything you guys do. Your show is an absolute gold mine. I'm an 11 plus year Navy P-8A instructor and transitioning to civilian life and the reserves in the next 3 years. The show has been an incredible resource to my wife and I as we dive into the next chapter of our family. The draw for me to civilian professional aviation as a second career is not just about the quality of life or profitability. It's the passion everyone in the community shares and the widespread dedication to reaching back and pulling up as many people along the way as possible. These aspects of service and mentorship really speak to me, and I feel the same sort of excitement now as I did as a brand new student aviator. Many thanks again for all your hard work and dedication. I hope it feels worth it because you guys can claim a direct positive impact to the entire aviation community, which not many people can claim in a lifetime. Say flying, keep faking it so we can all make it. That's from Seamus.
I like that.
I think he must be referring to mostly Ted, right? I mean, that's mostly
Ted the mentor.
Yeah, Ted mentoring. I
Well,
mean,
that's what I've done. So what's
resonates.
interesting is there's definitely different levels of passion in aviation.
Oh.
Like I can name several of our friends that we went to college with and
Yeah.
stuff that are just like at that happy hour we were at the other night with a bunch of pilots and our buddy, me and our buddy Sean, who are, fly GA and all this stuff. And, we go home from work flying, then we go fly. And then he's like, I just do not share the same passion for aviation that you guys do.
Who's like, our other buddy?
Chuck Airman, dude. He's like, yeah, I just, right. I do not feel that's as strong as you guys do about flying. Yeah. I'm like, Chuck, I'm actually jealous. Aviation is a terrible hobby. It is. I was just telling my dad this morning, driving home from the airport. I'm like, I would never recommend this. I was showing him, things I have to do on the plane. I got a fuel leak that's just a nightmare. I have to fix and shove my arm up in the fuel tank and this whole thing. And my insurance is due.
Air bottles,
it's like $5,000. It's ridiculous. Yeah, all this stuff. I'm like, this is a terrible hobby. This is like a crack habit. This is like having a hard drug habit because
I was having a similar conversation.
It's going to cost you a ton of money and it's kind of dangerous and everything else, but
it takes a ton of time. Whatever time you think it's going to take to go do a flight, it's 3 times as long.
It takes time. It's expensive. It's addictive. Yeah, it's just terrible. And I get pissed and grumpy when I can't go because I'm paying all this money and I'm like, I haven't flown the plane in 2 weeks.
Yeah. What are we doing here? That's like, I had a conversation with my cousin one time, and I was telling her about how we got the family into skiing, and we're taking the kids skiing, and it's this great family activity we're all into. I'm like, there couldn't be a worse family activity to get yourselves into than skiing. I guess airplanes is the one level above. But I'm like,
much work.
It's expensive. You got to drive somewhere. You got to pay to stay. Like, it's just rental equipment.
And you got to get everybody's skis on, and there's teaching them to carry their skis and all the.
It's just everything,
and it's like, and then you put it all on. I'm hot.
I gotta pee. And it's just like this 3-hour battle to get from the house to the top of the ski run, and it's just negative. And then once you start going down the hill, then it's fun.
And you're like, oh my god, wait.
Yeah, we're all having.
Everybody is having fun at the same time. This is incredible.
Amazing. Yeah. But it's like you've got to climb. It's like climbing this mountain for 3 hours straight, just cracking the whip, and you're another dumb hobby.
I wish I had less interests.
I know. All right, next email. Gents, I was listening to your latest episode, 142, and had a sticker idea after your discussion on hotel points and status. Similar to an OODA loop, you would have 2 circular arrows with one that says fake it till you make it and the other that says use it or lose it. Seems the best way to honor those amazing bursts of wisdom. Your podcast is the best, and I recommended it to many of my flying buddies. Go Fighting Sioux, never an eagle. Daryl.
Now, what does OODA stand for?
It stands for very good regards. Virtual reality.
This is the OODA loop was developed by the United States Air Force Colonel John Boyd. It's the observation, orientation, decision, and action.
Wow.
There you go.
We learned a lot there. Okay. See, that's the kind of education you get as a Fighting Sioux.
We have the same thing now at Southwest, but it's much easier to remember because it's just the ABCD.
The
So,
circle, the snake
yeah.
eating its own tail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Go ahead.
Hey guys, first off, I absolutely love the show. I listen to it regularly on my drive to the airport. Currently work as an FO in the 3-letter regional that flies out of Charlotte. I've enjoyed the last 2 years here and hope to end up at Delta someday. In the last episode, you had someone write in who was a pilot in the Air National Guard and was singing the praises of working both jobs, Guard and airlines. I'd like to second that opinion. I also wanted to add that you don't have to necessarily be a pilot in the Guard in order for it to be a great gig. I've worked the last 11 years as an F-16 crew chief in the Guard, and it's been great. Working both jobs isn't always ideal. 1 week in a month doesn't sound like much until you're gone a lot with your day job, but it helped me pay for all my pilot certificates and not bad having a little side income from something other than flying. It also made my first airline training a lot easier since I already had a decent knowledge of the aircraft systems. For anyone considering a dual career, the Guard is a great way to go, and I can teach you a lot about other aspects of aviation that you don't necessarily get exposed to as a pilot. I also wanted to mention how much I've enjoyed reading through Hard Landing with you guys. I was wondering if you know of a book that covers the industry post 9/11, something that discusses the big mergers that happened, like American US Air, Continental United, and Delta Northwest. Keep up the great work, Sam. I do not know of that, a book like that, but that would be interesting. Follow on.
Is it called Harder Landing? Like, what would you, if you were going to create that book, what would you title it?
I don't know.
Because I'm doing my Google Foo right now, and the first thing that comes off obviously is a Hard Landing, but there is nothing beyond that. But I mean, what a fascinating, like, it's got to be like merge. It has to be with the seniority list. Merging would be in the title, I think, or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Somebody's probably working on that book. That would be
Thomas Petzinger Jr. is hard at work.
Is there
right
a
now,
Thomas
hopefully.
Betzinger the third working on that book? It's your son. I think Petzinger Jr. is retired at this point. So
yeah,
we'll have to see. Good question. Sorry, we don't know the answer, Sam. Okay, that's going to do it for Mailbag. Thanks to Advanced Aircrew Academy for their longtime sponsorship. And speaking of sponsorship, you know our next sponsor. You love our next sponsor because they're out to protect you. Of course, I'm talking about Harvey Watt, the place to get loss of medical insurance for professional pilots. HarveyWatt.com, you can go on and look at their plans and rates. I was just playing around with the pilot disability loss of license calculator they have right on your website. You can go answer a few questions, how old you are, what kind of coverage you want, and it'll give you a monthly number. Or a cost per month. Great benefit, especially this time of year when folks are maybe negotiating salaries and comp packages, which we're going to get to in flight advice. Could be a nice little thing to throw in there. Maybe a couple $100 a month. The boss, that's water off a duck's back. You can throw it in there.
Water off a duck's back.
HarveyWatt.com. Check out all of the offerings they have for professional pilots. On to flight advice. Max, I have great news.
Quickly.
Flight advice. Follow up. Your favorite.
Yes. Read to me.
I will read it to you. Hey, guys, I sent in a flight advice submission a while back, and you featured it on episode 118. Houston-based corporate pilot struggling with airline FOMO. Thanks for the feature. I wanted to follow up with y'all. Turns out I had a great discussion with James at Raven, and he called me out when he asked my why. As in, why do I want to make the jump from a very good corporate job to the airlines? I had to be honest with myself, and after some soul searching, the only reason I wanted it was for the money. Not a good enough reason to make a major career change. Fast forward to August, our HR department calls us in for a meeting and makes us an announcement. They announced that our sister department is moving to Houston with their G650s and that our new pay ceiling will come up to what a 12-year narrow-body captain at United would make. Anyways, I'm here for the long haul, God willing. Happy ending. I'm so glad I had a good look in the mirror with James. So shout out to him. Thank you guys. Keep up the good content.
Awesome.
Cool.
That's great.
Love it.
It's a good thing he wasn't with the sister department that had to move.
Yeah, no kidding. Great news, guys.
That's how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are winners and sometimes there are losers.
That's right.
But no, it's great news.
Yeah. Awesome. Congrats. All right. Why don't you read this next flight advice? I actually found this on Pro Pilot World. Someone posted this. So
You're
they didn't actually
importing
write
flight
into
advice?
our show, but I stole it because I thought it was good. And it's just a change of pace because a lot of our flight advices are kind of the same, airline commuting type questions. So I wanted to mix it up. So this is good.
All right. I somewhat recently put in my notice with the small Part 91 flight department. As soon as I did, the owner reached out to me and convinced me to stay. He gave me very competitive package for the region. A little time goes by and the chief pilot got wind of my compensation package. He was genuinely upset at the compensation package I got. Also, I guess he did not get a raise as soon as I did. This has seemed to set off a rift between him and I. I'm not sure how to approach this. Anybody have some sage advice? Thanks. Yeah, put in your notice to the chief pilot. No, dude, what one of my biggest pet peeves with people running a flight department is when they don't have the other pilots back who they're leading supposedly or or superior to, and it's just like, and this is a case too where he should be happy about this, but it's about the fact that the junior guy was able to raise the bar a little bit, and then if he's upset about it, go get your piece. Like, go talk to the owner. Say, hey, like, what? Obviously, he's willing to part with some money to keep people around. So, like, he made it easier for you. He already paved the road. Like, what's?
Yeah.
It's just immature, dude, and you're just being a pouty baby.
It's just, this all comes down to, unfortunately, what we've talked to in the past. Pilots are great at a lot of things. Many of them are not great at negotiating. Many of them do not like to have uncomfortable conversations. Many of them do not know how to ask for a raise correctly. And that's the root of the issue, right?
I guess, but sometimes it's like, you know what? This dude want to put in his notice if you went to bat for the flight department to try and keep people from leaving by staying up with the change in compensation.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm saying.
That's what we're both saying. And those are the tough conversations. Like, if you're going to be a lead captain right now, and this is something you need to do to protect your boss from losing people, right? It's not this is like, look, we're vulnerable. And that's why it's important to chat with one of our sponsors.
The funny thing too that I see all the time is that people are, a lot of these managers of flight departments, they think they're like carrying the owner's torch and being such a great chief pilot by trying to make everything as cheap as possible. And you have to take a step back and be like, look, people don't own private aircraft if they want to do something as cheap as possible. Like, that is not, those two things do not go hand in hand. While, running an efficient flight department, because that being said, your number one threat of a corporate flight department is also what? The cost, right? Because if the cost exceeds the benefit, then the flight department will quickly soon to cease to exist. But that being said, the cheapest way is not always certainly the best way or serve the best interests of what you're trying to do. And so guys that are, you can't take that vacation because we don't want to have to hire a contract pilot. Well, dude, take a step back. Like, the $2,000 for the contract pilot or the tens of thousands for a type rating or even a recurrent for somebody is like so much, bigger. You can't hold people to indentured servitude like, over $2,000. It just doesn't make sense. And a lot of times those are not the feelings of the principal, right? Like, if asked, he would be like, yeah, no, I don't want this guy to leave. Like, he should be able to go on vacation.
Yeah.
Like that. And these guys just screw it up,
been in
dude,
those
for everybody. They run whole flight departments that could be so good, and they stand in the way of it being the best. And it's really unfortunate. The misguided, like,
a lot of bad leadership, unfortunately. And again, just because you have a type rating in an airplane doesn't mean you're a good leader. Just because you have 10,000 hours doesn't mean you're a good leader. Leadership is a skill. And that's what we've been working on with the MBAA stuff that I've been involved with, is trying to help people with these tools, because it's not their fault. This is something that a lot of people just have never been given exposure to, because it's not in the traditional training path.
That's it. Because you're trained to do everything as a pilot, but And then it's like, oh, but you're just supposed to know how to do
Yeah.
this other stuff. And some people
are just natural.
Are born to do it,
Yeah.
and some people it's a little more of a challenge.
Yeah. So okay. So I think we agree there. The other thing I was going to say, like, again, AirComp Calculator is a great tool here to get this conversation going for your chief pilot. But let's get back to this person's situation who is not the chief pilot. What would you do? What do you tell this person to do?
I would say, hey, you got to have the tough. A lot of times, a lot of these problems are solved by having the uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah.
And you just got to sit down when you're at dinner and be like, hey, man, ever since this happened, it seems to have bothered you. And I get it. Like, I understand, but I am not the solution to your problems. You have to talk to the owner. And, the way I see it, like I didn't ask for a raise. The compensation wasn't sufficient. So I put in my notice, and then he offered to pay me more. And he obviously is now shown to have a willingness to pay more. So it shouldn't be very hard for you. So take what happened, by happenstance of me trying to quit, and use it to your advantage and get the pay that you want. But don't take it out on me. Like, I wish you the best. I hope, it's we're on the same team here. And that's the thing. You just gotta talk about it, because people will sit there for years, dude, and and stew and be pissed about something that could be solved with literally a conversation. So I think the longer, and I think too, things like this, like the longer it festers, the worse it's going to get. So,
And it's tough. I get it. It's tough, especially if it's a 2-pilot, 1-airplane operation where, you want to make sure that your relationship is good, and you're bringing in an awkward conversation. Like, that can be a challenge, because you got to probably have dinner with this person and fly with them tomorrow. And then,
but you just got to talk about it. Like, you got to be able to say, hey.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
Make sure you put a link to the show in the thread here on ProPilot.
I will put the link here. And there's actually a lot of responses, which I haven't even gotten to read. I mean, here's the one. The CP should worry about his own shit and less about what anyone else is doing or getting paid. The guy replied. He said, the guy is the chief pilot's a nice guy. I don't know what flip the switch for him. To be honest with you, I don't think he had a real understanding of what goes on in the pilot hiring world. He basically accused me of making too much money, and he also referred to the industry taking a downturn. That may be true for right now, but the industry as a whole is always looking for quality people.
He should refer him back to the AirComp calculator.
Exactly.
Say, listen,
yeah,
I don't just make this up,
Yeah.
Like, there's things that are actually happening here. You just have to be willing to open your eyes a little bit and look around.
Yeah. And somebody said, the chief pilot is in a leadership position where his primary duty is to look out for those who work for him. If I had been chief pilot, I would have shook your hand and said, man, this is great. You deserve it. And I'm so happy you are staying. It's a pleasure to work with you. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
But then there's chief pilots that are looking out for themselves and only the owner, and don't care about the rest of anybody else. And that's my pet peeve.
Yeah.
If you will.
And that's where they think they're bringing the value. Yeah. Very political, a little bit of maneuvering there. But I think it's a good illustration of some of the challenges in business aviation that you face that are in a very individual level, with personalities and relationships that you have to manage. And that's part of the art of that side of the biz, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Good. That was a good one. I like that one. We'll have a link to the thread there if you want to read. If you don't know what ProPilot World is, check it out, propilotworld.com. Great message board for professional pilots. A little heavier on the business aviation and the airline stuff, but it's an awesome resource. I love that website. Always something good there. Thanks to all the listeners who wrote in to the show, emails and reviews. We really appreciate it. Go check out the new store on the website. I think we have about 30 hats. So get them while they're hot. And they are hot. I like you got the black one, right? I went blue. I went navy. It's quite sick. Very good. Thanks to Advanced Aircrew Academy.
Barris Jet Sales, Aircom Calculator, Tim Pope, Harvey Watt, all of our partners, all of the listeners. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Actually, next week. Until then, remember.
Flexibility is the key to air power. See you next time.
See ya.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.